The desert moon burned with a harsh white glow as Voltor stepped through the remains of the fallen outpost. Metal frames twisted like broken ribs, wires scattered like veins ripped from a dying machine. The air was heavy with silence, the kind that follows when life has already abandoned a place. Only the soft, crunching sound of his armored boots broke the stillness. He knelt beside a scorched stone, pressed 2 fingers into the ash, and lifted them toward the cold wind. Even the dust told a story. It always did. The outpost had fallen fast, violently, with no room for surrender or negotiation. It was the kind of destruction that left nothing behind, nothing except a question burning in Voltor's mind. Why would anyone fight so hard for a place so meaningless? His breath steadied, his thoughts sharpened. Something was wrong here, something that didn't match the patterns of war he had studied his entire life. His people believed mercy was weakness, compassion was foolishness, and hesitation was death. Yet every broken wall, every collapsed beam seemed to whisper that whoever lived here had fought with purpose, not survival. He scanned the ruins. Movement. A faint pulse of heat behind a fractured doorway. His hand instinctively reached for his weapon, but he didn't activate it. Instead, he walked slowly, cautiously, as if approaching an animal that might already be dying. Inside the shattered chamber, half buried beneath rubble, he saw a hand. Small, human. Voltor froze. He had studied humans in military archives. Fragile, inconsistent, emotion-driven. A species barely clinging to existence after the collapse of their homeworld. But he had never seen one alive. He pushed aside the metal slab, pinning the figure down. The human beneath it stirred weakly, his face pale, blood drying at the edge of his jaw. He was conscious, barely. Da-da-da. But his eyes, they opened with a strange calmness, not fear. You're one of them, the human whispered. Yes, Voltor answered. And you should not be alive. The man gave a faint, tired smile. People keep telling me that. Voltor didn't understand the meaning behind the smile. It wasn't arrogance. It wasn't defiance. It was something else. Something unfamiliar. You fought here? Voltor asked. The human nodded slowly. We tried, but not to win. His breathing grew shallow. We stayed, to get the civilians out. They needed time. Voltor stared at him. This did not make sense. Sacrifice without victory was considered madness in his culture, yet the human spoke as if it were obvious. Expected? Natural? Why? Voltor asked quietly. Why would you do that? Human's eyes softened. Because life, no matter how small, is worth saving. Voltor felt his chest tighten, strange, unwelcome discomfort. His people had no word for that idea. Not truly. He studied the wounded man, fragile, bleeding, fading, but with a spirit that refused to collapse. Something ancient and stubborn burned within him, something Voltor could not name. What is your purpose? Voltor asked. The human exhaled slowly. To protect, to help, to show mercy when we can. Voltor blinked. That word, mercy. He had read it in forgotten human archives, the term his scholars claimed had no true translation, a word his people mocked as weakness. And yet standing before him now was someone who had embodied it with a strength that shook the foundations of everything he believed. The human coughed, trembling. Tell me. Oh, did anyone escape? Voltor hesitated. He didn't know why he suddenly wanted to answer honestly. Yes, a transport fled the outpost before I arrived. The man closed his eyes in relief. A tear slid down his cheek. Voltor stared at the tear as if witnessing a miracle. He didn't know why, but he reached out and carefully lifted the human from the rubble. He felt something shift inside him. I thought he wasn't allowed to think. This human should have been left to die. But Voltor was not leaving him. Something deeper than training moved him now. Something instinctive, something dangerous, something that might change everything. And in that moment, Voltor realized he had taken his first step into a world his people feared more than death, a world shaped by mercy. Voltor did not know it yet. Saving this single human would ignite a chain of events that could reshape the fate of the galaxy. The translations started breaking. Professor Voltor had anticipated complexity, a minor distortion here. It's an unusual idiom there. But what emerged from the archive was not mere linguistic noise. It was chaos dressed as syntax, a storm of meaning that defied his most sophisticated translation algorithms. Words collided, definitions fractured, and every attempt to map a Terran concept onto known galactic dialects resulted in a hollow echo. He could feel it in his chest. Not emotion, not fully, something else. A vibration of intellect stretching against reality. A dissonance he could not compute. And yet it fascinated him. The Council's lumographs, normally calm and obedient, flickered under his scrutiny, projecting scenes of human life across the hall. One after another, a soldier offering water to a fallen enemy, teacher refusing revenge against a cheating student, children sharing rations with strangers in the rubble of a collapsed city. Each image carried the same invisible thread choice. They could punish, they could retaliate, they could take what was theirs by right, yet they chose another path, and the translation engines, precise as they were, could not contain it. Walter's mandibles twitched in frustration. He recalibrated, he realigned. He attempted to codify the subtleties. He created recursive translation matrices designed to track intention, consequence, and emotional gradient. For every logical model he built, the humans slipped through, their actions like shadows refusing measurement. He called Elias again. "Ambassador Ward," Volter said over the comm, his crystalline tones laced with something that might have been irritation or curiosity. "I am encountering resistance. It's not linguistic, but existential." Elias's laugh was faint through the comms, a human tick that seemed to underscore the impossibility of control. "You mean humans are being humans? Your phrasing is imprecise?" "Yeah, sorry. Force of habit." Walter scanned the next set of translations. One human soldier, isolated from his unit, had captured an enemy fighter responsible for massacring an entire village. Standard logic dictated execution. Military law demanded it. But the human commander bent down and pressed his hand against the enemy's shoulder. "I forgive you," the soldier whispered. The lumograph hummed faintly, projecting the scene as though it hung in physical space. The enemy soldier looked up, disbelief etched on his face. Volta analyzed, predicted, calculated. No formula could bridge the divide. Not forgiveness as a strategy, not mercy as a calculated loss, not even faith as a variable in human behavior. "Explain," Walter demanded into the comms. "Why does this individual forego his advantage?" Elias's voice was quieter now, almost reverent. "Because he believes mercy has power, that some strength lies beyond winning." Preposterous. Walter's eyes flicked to the lumograph. It is preposterous. Logic dictates survival depends on dominance, not benevolence. Elias hesitated. "Maybe that's where you're wrong." The archive's gravity field seemed to pulse, as if responding to the intensity of Walter's focus. He leaned into the holograms, studying every fold of human movement. He cataloged, annotated, and cross-referenced each scene with historical data. Wars, revolutions, genocides, the humans survived all. And yet in countless accounts, mercy appeared repeatedly in small, decisive moments, not imposed by authority, not demanded by doctrine, chosen. And sometimes, it worked. Walter's processors flickered under the weight of contradiction. Choice without logic, strength without force. Survival through surrender. He realized then that humanity's defining paradox was not their fragility, but their will. A fragile species wielding choices no other in the galaxy dared to make. He leaned back in his chair, the weight of understanding pressing against his crystalline chest. For centuries, his species had measured power in fleets, weapons, and intellect. The humans measured it in forgiveness. A thought, unbidden and unwelcome, entered his mind. Perhaps they are stronger than us. Elias appeared at the archive's doorway, tall and unassuming, hands resting on the frame. His eyes were tired, lined with the faint shadows of human history. "You're staring too hard," he said. "You'll break something." Walter's mandibles clicked in irritation. "I am recalibrating. It is necessary to comprehend this." "Aberration," Elias nodded slowly. "I think some things aren't meant to be fully understood, then they are meaningless." "No," Elias said softly. "They are human." For the first time, Walter considered that perhaps understanding wasn't the goal. Perhaps observation alone carried a lesson. The human's actions, inconsistent, irrational, terrifyingly generous, seemed to carry a rhythm he could not predict, a cadence beyond deduction. He walked to the edge of the archive, staring at the blue planet below. Could see storms twisting across the surface, oceans churning, cities glowing like veins. Humanity pulsed beneath him, alive, persistent, chaotic. He thought of the soldier, the one who spared his enemy. He thought of the countless others in the lumographs, every act of mercy, small or grand, a defiance of expected outcomes. Power through restraint, strength through vulnerability. The logic did not compute. And yet in some incomprehensible way it made sense. Night fell on the orbital station, not darkness, but the slow dimming of biolights. The archive hummed quietly, vibrating with the weight of thousands of human choices. Walter could feel the word pressing against him, insistent and unyielding. Mercy. Turned toward the lumosphere, hands hovering over the control panels. The room was silent, except for the faint pulsing of translation engines. Elias watched him. "You're learning," he said. "I am, observing," Walter corrected, but he didn't move. He was no longer merely cataloging. He was confronting a truth he had never anticipated, that human behavior, chaotic and defiant, might carry a form of strength his species had never conceived. A whisper of sound drifted through the chamber, almost imperceptible. The wind of the station brushing across open conduits, or perhaps something else, something beyond understanding. Elias raised an eyebrow, feeling anything. Walter considered the question. "I sense a pattern," he admitted. "Not in language, not in logic, but in behavior." "Good," Elias said. "It's the first step," and then he left, leaving the alien alone with the human stories. Walter sat in silence, the word mercy hovering like a specter before him. It refused to obey. It refused to be tamed. It refused to yield its secret. But somewhere deep inside, he felt a tremor of recognition. That human choice, that singular defiance of expected cruelty, had a gravity of its own, power that could not be measured in fleets or firepower, power he would have to understand or fail spectacularly trying. And as the station lights dimmed, Walter realized the word was alive. And it was waiting for him to catch up. The first field assignment changed everything. Walter had anticipated observing humanity from the archive, floating in orbit, shielded by translation engines and historical records. That, he assumed, was enough to understand, to quantify, to translate. But the Council disagreed. Direct observation is essential, the Council had said. Language divorced from context is meaningless. Which meant Walter, the galaxy's most accomplished linguist, had to leave the crystal halls and walk among humans. The transport was silent, cutting through the low-haze atmosphere of a contested planet. Below, the land was scarred by decades of conflict. Jagged cliffs, shattered forests, rivers blackened by chemical waste. Smoke curled in the distance like ghosts rising from forgotten cities. Walter's sensors processed the terrain with cold precision, noting every anomaly in soil composition, every residual heat signature, every motion pattern of surviving human settlements. Yet something else pulsed beneath it all, something that defied quantification: hope. He disembarked near a small village. The humans had abandoned most dwellings. Fires burned in controlled rings, and survivors moved with weary purpose. Children scavenged for scraps. Fathers whispered prayers into the wind. And men fortified makeshift shelters with broken planks and scavenged metal. Elias met him there, carrying a small satchel and a face marred with exhaustion. "Welcome to reality," he said lightly. "Far messier than any archive simulation," Walter observed. Everything human was messier than predicted. Their logic was non-linear, their priorities inconsistent, their fear tinged with hope. And yet they survived. Their first encounter was not with diplomacy or debate. It was with violence. A band of raiders emerged from the ash, weapons drawn, intent clear. Humans were outnumbered 3-1. By every standard, they should have been slaughtered. Walter braced for predictable responses: retreat, surrender, retaliation. His sensors indicated that humans were preparing for combat. Muscles tensed, hearts accelerated. The algorithms were primed for bloodshed, and then it happened. One of the village elders, a man with a scar running from temple to jaw, stepped forward, unarmed. His voice, though cracked with age, carried authority. "Enough," he shouted. The raiders paused. Confusion flickered across their faces. The elder held out his hands. "We can fight, or we can speak. Choose." A younger human, barely more than a boy, picked up a weapon and advanced toward the raiders. But the elder's gaze fell on him, steady and unyielding. The boy froze, lowering the weapon. Walter's sensors reeled. The expected outcomes fractured. The humans did not attack. The humans did not flee. They offered dialogue. One raider, a man with fire in his eyes, laughed bitterly. "Talk, you're weak or strong," the elder replied. "Stronger than you imagine." The standoff lasted minutes, which felt like hours to Walter then. Slowly, the raiders lowered their weapons. Not all. Some resisted, but the majority paused, uncertain, unprepared for this. Walter's chest crystals hummed with something unfamiliar. The humans had leveraged restraint into a weapon. Not fear, not force, but choice. And it worked. Later, Walter followed the humans into the ruined village. They shared what little food they had with displaced raiders, offered water to the wounded, and patched clothes for those who had none. They listened, really listened, to enemies who had killed their kin. His sensors, designed to quantify survival probability, failed. By logic, these humans should have collapsed under such vulnerability. By logic, mercy should have been fatal, yet no collapse occurred. Instead, Walter saw a pattern he could not encode. Trust. Respect. An unseen chain of reciprocity forged in choice, courage, and hope. He approached the elder. "Explain," he demanded, though it sounded closer to awe than command. "Why forgive those who harm you?" The elder looked at him, eyes deep with the weight of loss and survival. "'Cause if we do not, they win twice. First with violence, then with the hatred we carry." Walter processed, tempted to reduce to formula. Failed. "Hatred reduces efficiency," he said finally. The elder smiled faintly. "It destroys us. Mercy preserves us." That night, Walter watched from a hill as the village slept. Fires dotted the landscape. Children nestled against survivors' shoulders, and the sky above was vast, deep, unbroken. He stared at the stars, a strange sensation crawling across his crystalline chest, a faint, persistent warmth. "Not luck," he whispered to himself. "Not chance. Someone wanted them to live." The thought made him uneasy. Logic offered no such agency, yet he could not dismiss the possibility. It lingered like a subtle rhythm behind his calculations, a pulse he could not ignore. He returned to the village the next morning, drawn to a smaller, more intimate act. A young boy approached a raider who had stolen from the village the day before. The boy offered a loaf of bread, held it out, and said simply, "I do not hate you." The raider froze. Then, after a heartbeat that stretched into eternity, he accepted the bread. He did not speak. He did not smile. But his eyes softened, a subtle acknowledgement of something deeper, something unspoken. Walter realized then, as he recorded the moment, that his understanding of humans had shifted. They did not forgive because it was efficient. They forgave because it was human. Because it preserved not just life, but choice, dignity, and hope. The word mercy had a weight he could feel. Not just a definition, not just an idea, a force. And the humans wielded it with precision and courage. He returned to the hill at dusk, alone. The stars reflected off his crystalline surface, cold and precise. He thought of the soldiers, the villagers, the boy, the raiders. Patterns swirled in his mind, but they were not mathematical. They were emotional. They were alive. And somewhere deep, in the quiet logic of his being, a new understanding began to form. Mercy was not weakness. Mercy was strength. Strength not of firepower or strategy. Strength of heart, will, and spirit. Strength humans chose to exercise even in the face of death. The galaxy had never known such a weapon. Walter closed his eyes, letting the words settle in his consciousness. It was no longer alien. It was not yet fully understood. But it had purpose. It had weight. And tomorrow, he would witness it again, in a test far greater than this village, where mercy would demand everything of a human and risk losing it all. The wind whispered through the charred trees, carrying the faint scent of smoke and rain. Somewhere in the dark, humans chose life over vengeance, and Walter realized he was no longer just a translator, he was a student. The battlefield awaited, but the enemy expected mercy to be weakness. Walter descended onto the scarred plains of Arden V with the human contingent. Smoke drifted in low ribbons over cratered ground, and the air carried the metallic temps of blood and ozone. Distant artillery fired with a rhythm that was horrifying yet hypnotic. Every pulse, every flash, every explosion was a test, not just of survival, but of morality. The humans moved with a strange combination of urgency and deliberation. Their weapons were ready, yet their expressions betrayed calculation beyond tactical necessity. They did not strike without reason. They paused before lethal action. They observed their enemies as much as they engaged. Walter's sensors recorded each movement, attempting to map intention against outcome. But the human's pattern was alive, unpredictable, and utterly human. Elias walked beside him, shoulder scar glinting in the firelight. "You'll see," he said. "It's easy to talk about mercy when it's theoretical, harder when it's concrete." Walter inclined his head. "I am prepared." "You never are," Elias replied with a faint grin. The enemy forces approached a mechanized legion designed for total annihilation. Their strategy was merciless, designed to exploit hesitation. Every step of their advance screamed inevitability, destruction for any human in their path. The humans held their ground. They fortified positions with whatever they could scavenge, but there was a strange hesitation in their attack formation. Walter observed, puzzled. Their engines and tactics were efficient, yet restrained. They did not strike first. They offered openings, and in doing so, left themselves exposed. "Why?" Walter asked quietly. "Exposure without retaliation is illogical. You risk annihilation." Ilias's eyes were dark, unreadable. "Because the moment you assume all risk is bad, you forget all the reasons to hope." Walter processed. He did not fully understand hope. Not yet. He understood survival. Yes. Victory. Yes. Efficiency. Yes. But hope, the human refusal to surrender even when logic dictated death, was something alien, something dangerous, something magnificent. The first skirmish erupted with startling intensity. Enemy troops advanced on a ruined outpost, their weapons calibrated for maximum lethality. The humans countered, but not lethally. They disabled machinery, cut off supply lines, incapacitated rather than destroyed. Walter's mind raced. Their strategy defied probability. By the numbers, they should have been obliterated within minutes. Yet they endured. They adapted. They chose mercy in moments when vengeance was simpler, and it worked. And then it happened. A small squad of human soldiers encountered a group of enemy officers responsible for a massacre in the previous campaign. Every protocol, every rule, every instinct demanded annihilation. Yet the human commander, a man scarred by previous encounters, lowered his weapon. "Mercy," he whispered to his squad. The soldiers hesitated. The enemy, expecting death, froze in disbelief. One of them attempted to attack, and the commander stopped him with a hand on the shoulder. Walter's sensors flared, calculated probability, measured tactical advantage, predicted outcomes. All algorithms failed. The humans had no safety net, yet they chose restraint. They chose to spare those who had no claim to mercy. The enemy faltered. Confusion rippled through their ranks. Their next move was uncertain. And in that instant of hesitation, the humans gained power, not through weapons, but through choice. Walter's mind raced. He had observed mercy in villages, in moments of small kindness. But here on the battlefield, mercy became a weapon. An unimaginable, incomprehensible force. The clash continued, each encounter a test of limits. Humans healed enemies as often as they fought them. They shared rations with captives. They offered shelter to those who had tried to kill them. Each act of mercy was a defiance of probability, a rewriting of what was possible. Walter observed, recording, calculating, but he could not reduce it to formula. Not yet. Each choice carried consequence beyond measurable outcomes, a ripple in morale, a shock to the enemy psyche, a strengthening of human cohesion. One human soldier, a boy not more than 16, faced a raider who had killed his brother. The boy's hands shook as he held his weapon, and the raider raised his in challenge. And the boy dropped the weapon. Walter's sensors could not quantify the moment. Probability dictated death. Logic dictated retaliation. Yet the boy stepped forward, offering water, then words, then the faintest nod of acknowledgement. The raider, stunned, did not attack. He retreated. Walter realized then what he had been missing. Mercy was not absence of power. It was power wielded with intentionality, with courage stronger than hatred, stronger than fear. Night fell. The battlefield was quiet, except for the distant groans of machinery and the wind-stirring debris. Humans tended to their wounded, both their own and their enemies. Walter stood on a ridge, observing the strange aftermath. By every calculation, the humans should have been at the brink of collapse, but they were not. Their endurance was rooted in choice, in defiance, in the courage to forgive. He considered the word again, mercy. It was no longer merely a concept to translate. It was a force shaping events, bending probabilities, altering outcomes. It was alive. And for the first time, Walter felt a flicker of something he could not name. Reverence? Ow. Something akin to belief. Not luck, he whispered to himself, watching a human nurse bandage an enemy's wound. Not chance. Someone wanted them to survive. Somewhere in the stars, the humans were connected to something greater, something unseen, something vast. And in that connection, they found a strength no technology, no fleet, no weapon could rival. Walter realized that understanding mercy would require more than observation. It would require immersion, risk, and perhaps a willingness to feel. He looked down at the humans, scattered across the battlefield, alive despite the odds. And for the first time, he wondered, could a species so small, so fragile, wield mercy as the galaxy's greatest weapon? And then a distant flare illuminated the horizon, the enemy regrouping, preparing for a renewed assault. The test was not over. The humans stood ready, not with hatred, not with rage, but with mercy. And Walter understood. He had yet to witness the full weight of the word. The human commander stepped forward, unarmed, into the enemy ranks. Walter's sensors screamed in protest. Probability matrices flared red, alarm sounding in his mind. Every logical model he had constructed predicted annihilation, instant death. Yet the commander moved with calm determination, stride measured, eyes unwavering. Elias's voice came over the comm. Watch closely, Professor. This is the moment. The enemy paused. They expected hesitation, fear, panic. They did not expect confidence. They did not expect humanity. The commander stopped in the center of the battlefield, raising his hands. His voice carried clearly across the scarred plains. Enough. Silence fell. Smoke drifted lazily, punctuating the stillness. Enemy soldiers looked at one another, uncertain. The humans behind him did not raise their weapons. They waited. They trusted. Walter could not calculate trust. He had no equations for courage in the face of probable death, no algorithms for the audacity of mercy. Yet he observed, recording every micro-expression, every pulse of fear and determination. The commander spoke again. Slowly, deliberately. Leave. Go home. No more killing. Not today. Not ever here. A murmur spread through the enemy ranks. Some hesitated, weapons lowering slightly. Others laughed, a hollow derisive sound, until a human soldier, standing behind the commander, stepped forward and repeated the words, "No more. Leave." Walter's mind raced. The humans had created a chain of authority, not through force, but through moral courage. The enemy was confused. Their strategy relied on fear. Fear had no purchase here. And then the impossible happened. The enemy commander, the one responsible for slaughtering entire settlements, stepped forward. His face was twisted with disbelief, rage, and something he could not name. The human commander did not flinch. He met the enemy's gaze evenly. "I forgive you," he said. Walter's crystalline chest resonated. His processors, capable of analyzing millions of interactions per second, could not compute the variables of choice, trust, and empathy intertwined in that single act. He watched, suspended in disbelief, as the enemy lowered his weapon, eyes wide. The battlefield held its breath. The human soldiers did not attack. They did not flinch. They simply waited, steady and unwavering, radiating a confidence born not of numbers or firepower, but of will. And slowly, the enemy began to withdraw. It's tentative, uncertain, but withdrawing nonetheless. Walter felt something new stir inside him, awe. Not just for the humans, but for the concept itself. Mercy was not a weakness. It was a weapon. A force that could alter outcomes more fundamentally than fleets, more decisively than firepower. He realized then that the humans had always understood this. They had survived the impossible not through machines or strategy alone, but through the audacity to choose mercy when all reason demanded violence. Later, the battlefield was quiet. Smoke curled over the remains of broken vehicles. Survivors moved carefully among the fallen, tending the wounded. The humans treated the enemy with care, bandaging wounds, offering water, even sharing rations. Walter followed the commander, recording, analyzing, attempting to understand. His mind, so long disciplined by logic, struggled to accommodate the enormity of what he had witnessed. Why forgive? He asked quietly, as he walked beside the commander. The commander did not answer immediately. He looked at the horizon, eyes shadowed by the memory of what had transpired. Finally, he spoke. Because if we do not, we lose twice, he said. First to their weapons, then to the hatred that festers inside us. Mercy preserves us, even when it risks everything. Voltaire processed the statement. He wanted to reduce it to formula. He wanted to predict outcomes, create matrices, define limits. But it could not be contained. It existed beyond calculation, beyond probability, beyond the narrow confines of logic. It was human. And it was magnificent. That night, Voltaire observed the commander from a distance. The battlefield was quiet, except for the soft murmurs of humans and enemies alike. Tending wounds, sharing food, and sitting vigil over the dead. The stars above were scattered like diamonds on black velvet, vast and incomprehensible. Walter's gaze drifted upward. He could sense an order in the chaos, an intelligence in the unfolding of events, subtle and vast, beyond form. Humans believed in a creator who guided the small miracles' survival against impossible odds. Unexpected mercy, courage that defied reason, he whispered to himself. Not luck. It's someone wanted them to live. A faint smile touched the human commander's lips as he looked at the stars. Walter felt something stir within him, an unfamiliar warmth, a flicker of understanding, and the beginnings of belief in a force beyond computation. The humans had survived against all odds, not because of firepower, not because of strategy, not because of numbers. They survived because they understood something the galaxy had yet to comprehend. Mercy was not surrender. Mercy was strength. And they wielded it with courage. Voltaire realized that the word he had spent decades trying to translate was more than a concept. It was a force of nature, a defining principle of humanity itself. It had no translation, not in any language, not in any algorithm. And perhaps he thought quietly some things were never meant to be translated. They were meant to be witnessed. He looked at the human commander again, silhouetted against the stars, and understood. The galaxy's greatest weapon had always walked among humans. And somewhere deep in the fabric of the universe, it seemed as though the unseen intelligence behind creation had allowed it to happen. Walter whispered, almost in awe. So this is power. The battlefield lay quiet, but the lesson had been written in the choices of men. Mercy was not weakness. It was the sharpest edge in the galaxy, honed by courage, faith, and humanity. And tomorrow, the word would demand even more of him. The galaxy tests mercy. The council summoned him with urgent news. The galaxy itself was about to test mercy. Walter returned to the orbital station above Kestrel Ikes, the lumographs of Terran history still burning in his mind. He had witnessed a village spared, a battlefield transformed by choice. He had seen humans wield mercy as a weapon. And yet, the council's message suggested that what lay ahead would dwarf every prior trial. The briefing hall pulsed with light as Walter entered. Representatives from countless species filled the chamber, some humanoid, some utterly alien, their forms oscillating between states of matter he could barely categorize. Holoscreens projected a map of the quadrant. Red lines marked zones of conflict. A coalition of aggressive species had converged, threatening hundreds of inhabited systems. Their strategy was simple: domination through fear and annihilation. Elias was already there, standing near the human delegation. He caught Walter's eye and gave a small nod. "It's bigger than any battle you've seen." Walter processed the data. The enemy fleet outnumbered all coordinated Terran forces combined. Every calculation predicted catastrophe. Survival probability was negligible. Logic dictated surrender, evacuation, or total annihilation. "Then mercy is impossible," Walter said aloud, more to himself than anyone else. Elias's reply was quiet, measured. "That's what makes it human." Walter studied the human commander again, the same man whose choice on Arden V had altered the course of that battle. The commander's eyes were steady, reflecting the depth of experience and a calm that bordered on audacity. "You expect mercy to succeed where reason predicts failure?" Walter asked, incredulous. "Mercy is not for the weak," the commander replied. "It's for those strong enough to wield it, even when it seems impossible." Walter's crystalline skull pulsated faintly. "You defy the laws of probability." "Maybe the laws of probability don't account for courage," the commander said. Walter realized then that the human strength lay not in numbers, not in weapons, not in technology. It lay in will. In the audacity to choose mercy when annihilation was certain. In defiance of the cold calculus of eventually, the humans began to pray. The first engagement of the coalition fleet occurred, near the cluster of systems known as the Etherian Expanse. Walter observed from a command station orbiting above. The human forces were vastly outnumbered. Entire armadas could be obliterated with a single coordinated strike. And yet, the humans hesitated. Not out of cowardice, not out of indecision, but because they offered a chance for the enemy to retreat, to surrender, to choose life over destruction. The alien commanders expected the humans to exploit weaknesses ruthlessly. Instead, the humans communicated their intent: withdraw or be spared, a transmission repeated in multiple tongues. Walter felt an unfamiliar resonance in his chest. His data stream struggled to reconcile the probability curves. Logic did not allow mercy in the face of overwhelming odds. Humans did. And slowly, a ripple began to spread. Some of the coalition ships hesitated. Some reversed course. Some surrendered entirely, unwilling to strike a species so audacious as to challenge annihilation with mercy. Walter leaned forward, fascinated. Choice had become a weapon. Mercy had become a shield. And the humans, tiny and vulnerable in the cosmic expanse, leveraged it with precision and courage. The council chambers erupted in discussion. Other species demanded retaliation. "They are naive," one ambassador hissed. "They risk all of us." But the human delegation remained calm. Ilias's voice cut through the chaos. "They are not naive. They are deliberate. They are human." Walter recorded, cataloged, analyzed, and failed to reduce the phenomenon to formula. The humans' choices defied all known predictive models. Every act of mercy altered the trajectory of events. Every surrender offered became a seed for change. Every restraint became leverage. It was not weakness. It was the ultimate strength. Hours later, Walter accompanied the human commander to a forward observation post. From there, he could see the fleet movements in real time. The enemy commanders were confused, frustrated, unprepared for restraint. Their predictive models had no variables for mercy as a strategy. A small group of enemy ships approached a fragile human outpost. By every measure, the humans should have fired immediately. The loss of life would have been swift and brutal if they did not. Yet the human commander instructed them to hold fire. Walter's sensors screamed again. Probability dictated immediate engagement. Human lives would be lost. And yet the humans trusted mercy to prevail. The enemy hesitated, scanning the human fleet, uncertain. Then one ship veered away. Then another. The chain of doubt spread. Humanity's audacity reshaped the battlefield without a single shot. Walter's understanding shifted. He had observed mercy on a village, on a battlefield, in individual moments. But here, on a galactic scale, mercy was a force that altered reality itself. And in that moment, he sensed something else, subtle, vast, invisible. An intelligence beyond understanding, guiding, allowing, shaping. Not interference, but orchestration. Not manipulation, but presence. The humans called it faith. He called it wonder. The night cycle began over the Etherian expanse. Walter stood beside the commander, staring at the flickering stars beyond the observation dome. "You gamble with everything," he said quietly. "Every choice of mercy risks annihilation." The commander's gaze remained fixed on the stars. "Not everything is ours to save," he said. "But what we can save, we will. Even if it costs us everything else." Walter's mind processed the enormity. Mercy was not sentimental. It was deliberate. It was strategy, ethics, courage, and faith intertwined. And the galaxy, vast and indifferent, responded. He whispered to himself, a thought he would not have allowed a day before. Perhaps this is the way the universe is meant to work. Not through fear, not through domination, but through courage and mercy. And somewhere deep among the stars, the humans began to pray. The galactic test was far from over. Entire civilizations had turned their gaze toward this fragile species that wielded mercy like a sword. And Walter, the translator, the observer, the alien who had believed logic could contain all meaning, realized the truth. The human's greatest weapon had no translation. It had a name, mercy, and it had just begun. The counterintuitive strike. The enemy regrouped, but the humans prepared a counterintuitive strike built entirely on mercy. Walter observed from the bridge of the human flagship as the coalition fleet reformed, their numbers daunting, their intent lethal. Every algorithm he ran predicted annihilation. The humans were outgunned, outnumbered, outmatched in every measurable way. Yet they moved with purpose. "Explain this," Walter demanded, voice tight in crystalline resonance. "All probability dictates failure. Why hold back?" Elias, standing beside him, gave a faint smile. "Because what you call failure, the humans call a chance." The commander appeared on the bridge, tall, steady, eyes dark and resolute. "Mercy," he said simply. "We strike with it, not against it." Walter's eyes widened. "How does one strike with mercy?" "By giving the enemy a choice they do not expect," the commander replied. "By offering paths to retreat, survival, even alliance. By showing restraint where they expect slaughter, we force hesitation. And hesitation is a weapon." The human fleet moved forward. Sensors confirmed the enemy's advance, fast, aggressive, intent clear. But the humans did not fire first. They broadcasted transmissions, warnings, safe passages, instructions for withdrawal. They offered surrender terms far more generous than any protocol dictated. Walter's processors struggled. Every action contradicted standard tactics. Every strategy seemed suicidal. And yet, the enemy faltered. Confusion spread like a virus. Their own commanders argued, their formations wavered, and their morale cracked. Mercy, Walter realized, was now a tangible force in the universe. It was shaping reality, bending expectations. Rewriting the outcome of the impossible, the first wave of the enemy fleet approached the human defensive line. Walter expected the inevitable carnage. The humans, vastly outnumbered, should have been obliterated in seconds. Yet the fleet held firm, not with weapons, but with audacity. Every ship allowed openings, every command allowed withdrawal, every decision radiated choice. An enemy cruiser hesitated. Another followed. Probability curves fractured, failing to predict the outcome. Walter's mind raced, recalculating endlessly. The human's restraint was not weakness. It was a weapon sharper than any cannon. Then it escalated. A smaller enemy detachment attempted to exploit a gap, confident the humans would respond with violence. The human commander, unflinching, ordered a different approach. "We offer them a bridge. Safe passage. Let them leave." The enemy paused. Confusion rippled. Sensors recorded erratic maneuvers. Walter realized the humans were weaponizing mercy, creating psychological pressure. forcing doubt, disarming aggression without firing a shot. And it worked. Ships began retreating. Enemy forces debated their next move. Fear of humanity's audacious restraint of their willingness to show mercy began to erode confidence. What logic could not dictate, human courage accomplished. Walter studied the human crews. There was no fear in their eyes. No hesitation. Only focus, and a strange rhythm of confidence that defied calculation. They moved with precision, not through aggression, but through principle. Every act of mercy was deliberate. Every choice reinforced cohesion. Every restraint shattered enemy expectation. He turned to Elias. This defies every measure. It should fail. Only if you judge by fear and power, Elias replied. Mercy works because it transcends them. And the humans pressed forward, navigating a web of enemy ships, offering aid to wounded opponents, sending encrypted instructions to minimize harm. Each act of mercy spread, disrupting enemy cohesion, forcing them into chaotic indecision. Walter's chest crystals thrummed in resonance. The humans were performing the impossible, bending probability itself with moral courage. Night fell over the expanse. The enemy's momentum collapsed. Ships began defecting, crews surrendering not out of fear, but out of awe and confusion. The human fleet advanced, not with missiles or plasma, but with principle, audacious, deliberate, merciful. Walter observed the commander standing on the bridge, arms crossed, eyes on the field. How far can they push it? He whispered. Elias looked at him. As far as it takes? Humans always bet on hope, even when everything else says no. Walter felt it then, a quiet intelligence, subtle but vast, threading through the chaos. Coincidence? Fate? Divine orchestration? Humans called it faith. He called it undeniable pattern. The universe responded when choice met courage. By dawn, the coalition fleet had fractured. Entire squadrons turned back. Enemy leaders surrendered, unwilling to continue against humans who would not strike without reason. Humans who offered mercy when annihilation seemed inevitable. Walter's crystalline chest glowed faintly as he recorded the aftermath. His lifetime of linguistic and tactical mastery was insufficient to fully comprehend what he had just witnessed. Mercy, wielded with courage and intelligence, had rewritten the rules of war. It was the ultimate weapon, sharper than steel, more decisive than firepower, and more enduring than fear. And somewhere, in the quiet moments between explosions and retreat, Walter sensed it, the unseen hand-guiding events, subtle and vast, allowing humans to prove that compassion was not weakness. It was strength, and he was only beginning to understand its weight. The human fleet moved into position, battered but victorious. No celebration, no fanfare, only quiet determination, tending to the wounded, aiding the surrendered, and preparing for what came next. Walter watched them. They were small, fragile, human, yet in their choice to wield mercy, they had reshaped the galaxy. And he understood finally that the word he had sought to translate for decades was not a word at all. It was a force. It was alive. And tomorrow, it would demand even more. The ultimate test, the final confrontation, approached, a test of mercy unlike any the galaxy had seen. Walter stood on the observation deck of the human flagship, staring at the vast array of enemy ships massing in the Korath sector. It was a force unlike any he had encountered before. Hundreds of vessels. A testament to destruction, each designed to obliterate life with ruthless efficiency. Logic predicted certain defeat. Every tactical model he had ever studied screamed annihilation. Yet, beneath the sensors and probabilities, Walter felt something else, a quiet defiance, a rhythm of will, unquantifiable and unyielding. Humans, he realized, were preparing to confront annihilation not with vengeance, but with mercy. Elias appeared at his side. "This is it," he said quietly. "The galaxy will test them, test you, in ways no archive or simulation can. Watch closely." Voltora's crystalline form pulsed faintly. His mind honed to analyze and predict, now grappled with uncertainty. And yet, unlike any uncertainty before, this one carried a peculiar hope. The human fleet advanced into the Korath Nebula, where enemy formations awaited. Sensors detected, weapons primed, shields bristling, systems at maximum readiness. Every calculation indicated disaster. Every measure showed probability of survival near zero. And yet, the humans did not fire. They held their weapons, kept their positions, and broadcast a message to the enemy: surrender or be spared. No further violence is necessary. Vaulter sensors faltered. Probability matrices shattered. The enemy hesitated. Confusion spread. They had anticipated brutality, but not restraint. They had predicted attack, but not mercy. The human commander's voice came over the calm and resolute. Every life spared strengthens us. Every act of mercy shifts the battle. Stand firm. The humans did. The first enemy wave struck. Projectiles, beams, and missiles tore through space. Yet human ships absorbed, evaded, and deflected without retaliating lethally. They prioritized life, not strategy alone, not revenge, not dominance. Vaulter watched, stunned. Every act of mercy, every choice to restrain, disrupted the enemy's formation, forced hesitation, and eroded cohesion. Ships surrendered in disbelief, crews defected in awe, and enemy leaders faltered under the weight of human audacity. He realized, in a revelation that made his crystalline chest resonate, that mercy was not just an idea, it was a force. A tangible, unstoppable force that reshaped probability, altered outcomes, and transformed fear into compliance. Amid the chaos, a human captain spotted a disabled enemy vessel, its crew trapped in failing systems. Standard protocol demanded destruction. Standard logic demanded total elimination. Yet he did the unthinkable. He sent a boarding party not to kill, but to rescue. Vaulter recorded every motion, every hesitation, every decision. His mind strained to encode the behavior into logic. But mercy, he saw, was beyond encoding. It required courage, choice, and faith. Faith, that quiet, unseen intelligence guiding events. Threading through chaos, permitting survival against impossible odds. Humans believed in it, acted upon it, and wielded it as a weapon. And it worked. By the climax of the battle, enemy formations had collapsed. Ships that once threatened entire systems now drifted in surrender, crews awed, confused, and alive. The humans moved among them, not with triumph, but with calm efficiency, repairing systems, providing medical aid, offering food and shelter. Every act reinforced the principle that had guided them through impossible odds. Mercy was strength. Vaulter followed the human commander to the bridge where he stood, surveying the aftermath. The galaxy, immense and indifferent, had tested humanity. They had faced annihilation, faced enemies who outnumbered and outgunned them, and yet prevailed. Not through firepower, not through tactics, but through audacity, courage, and mercy. Vaulter felt a flicker deep inside his consciousness, awe, understanding, and a nascent belief. He whispered, almost involuntarily, not luck. Someone wanted them to survive. The human commander glanced at him, eyes steady, and said, "Mercy is never weakness. It is the strongest choice we can make." Vaulter's mind echoed the words, resonating with a truth beyond language, beyond logic, beyond translation. Mercy had no equivalent in any dialect he knew. It had no calculation, no formula, covers no precedent. It was uniquely human, and it was unstoppable. Night fell over the Korath sector. The stars shone faintly, vast and indifferent, yet somehow alive with the memory of what had transpired. Vaulter stood alone, observing the humans tending to both their own and their former enemies. The galaxy had been changed by small acts of courage and choice, by the audacity to wield mercy when annihilation seemed inevitable. For the first time, Vaulter understood the word fully, not as a concept to translate, but as a force to witness, to respect, to revere. Mercy was humanity's gift and their weapon. And somewhere, in the quiet weave of the universe, He sensed it, the unseen hand guiding events, subtle and vast, allowing humans to demonstrate that the greatest strength lies not in destruction, but in compassion. The humans had survived the ultimate test, and Walter knew that the galaxy would never be the same. Somewhere, the quiet aftermath, the humans knelt, prayed, whispered gratitude for survival, not for glory, not for power, but for life and for the courage to choose mercy when it mattered most. And Walter, alien among them, realized the final truth. The word had no translation. It had a power, and the humans wielded it like no one else could. The galaxy remembers the lesson was complete. Mercy had reshaped not just the battle, but the very soul of the galaxy. Walter stood on the observation deck of the flagship, watching the remnants of the Coalition fleet drift away. Smoke, fire, and debris painted the void like scars on a wound that was slowly healing. But amidst the chaos, a pattern had emerged. Order born not from destruction, but from restraint. The humans had survived impossible odds. They had faced fleets that dwarfed their own, armies that hungered for annihilation, and yet they had prevailed. Not through superior technology, not through strategy alone, but through courage, choice, and mercy. Walter's crystalline form thrummed faintly as he observed the crews, tending both their own wounded and the enemy's. Every act of compassion, every deliberate choice to spare life, had strengthened the human position. Each gesture echoed across the battlefield, reverberating through the minds of the enemy and allies alike. He turned to the human commander, the man who had become both a symbol and a force. "It is incomprehensible," Walter said. "No algorithm can predict it. No language can contain it. The humans, they wield mercy as a weapon." The commander's eyes, calm and unwavering, met his. "Mercy is not weakness," he said. "It is the strongest choice we can make, and it is what makes us human." Walter's processors attempted to encode the concept, to reduce it to formula, to translate it into every dialect in the Council archives. Every attempt failed. Mercy had no equivalence. It could not be measured, quantified, or fully understood. It could only be witnessed. In the days that followed, the galaxy took note. Reports came from systems that had watched the events unfold. Enemy leaders defecting. Entire fleets surrendering without combat. Civilizations reconsidering aggression when faced with a species that defied logic with courage and compassion. Humans, fragile and small by every standard, had become a force unlike any other, not feared for their weapons, but revered for their audacity to choose mercy. Walter recorded each account, each observation, each subtle miracle. His mind, disciplined by logic and calculation, began to sense patterns beyond comprehension, the unseen hand of providence guiding survival. The quiet intelligence, threading through chaos, the small coincidences that allowed humans to persevere. He remembered the words of the village elder, the Arden V commander, the countless small acts of courage he had witnessed. Mercy preserves us, even when it risks everything else. Oh, he understood. Mercy was not passive. Mercy was active. It required strength, patience, courage, and faith. It could topple empires, reshape conflict, and change the course of civilizations. It was uniquely human. Walter walked among the humans in the aftermath, observing their quiet acts, helping the injured, sharing rations, repairing ships, comforting the fearful. He saw no pride, no triumphalism, only steadfast commitment to life and to one another. He paused as he watched a young human soldier approach an enemy officer who had caused immense suffering. The soldier offered water, a blanket, a nod of understanding. The officer accepted, bewildered. A spark of recognition passed between them. Life, compassion, and choice mattered more than vengeance. Walter whispered to himself, his voice trembling with awe. Not luck, not chance. Someone wanted them to live, somewhere beyond the stars. The quiet intelligence he had glimpsed throughout his journey, the vast, unseen intelligence of creation seemed to acknowledge the act. It was subtle, unspoken, yet undeniable. The humans had aligned their will with something greater than themselves. and it had allowed them to prevail as the flagship sailed through the calm aftermath of war. Volta recorded the final observation in his log. The humans possess a power no fleet, no weapon, no language can contain. It is courage, it is compassion, it is mercy. It is beyond translation. It is beyond calculation. It is the essence of what it means to be human. The galaxy may measure fleets and firepower, but the true strength of this species lies in the audacity to choose mercy. When all odds declare annihilation inevitable, they do not merely survive, they inspire. They define what it means to endure, to believe, and to hope. Walther turned his gaze to the stars, vast and unbroken, and allowed himself the faintest smile. He had sought to translate a word. He had witnessed a force, and somewhere quiet and infinite, the universe whispered back. The humans had proven that mercy was not weakness. It was power. It was strength. It was humanity. And the galaxy would never forget.